Imagine waking up one morning, making your coffee, sending your kids to school, and then your phone buzzes. A message from your bank. Your mortgage repayment is overdue. Please contact us immediately. That one message, that one moment. And just like that, everything you worked for, everything you sacrificed for, begins to crumble. This is not a story about one family. This is the story of thousands of Melbourne families in 2026. Melbourne was supposed to be the dream. Clean streets, world-class schools, stunning coastline, a booming economy. People flew in from across the globe just to plant roots here. They emptied their savings, borrowed to their limits, signed on the dotted line, because everyone said Melbourne property only goes one way, up. And for years, it did. But 2026 has arrived like a cold wind nobody prepared for, and the dream that once defined this city is quietly turning into a nightmare. To understand how we got here, we need to go back. When COVID hit, the Reserve Bank of Australia slashed interest rates to historic lows. Borrowing became almost free, and Melbourne's property market responded like a match thrown into a petrol can. A modest two-bedroom apartment that was worth $450,000 in 2019 was selling for $650,000 by 2022. Buyers were waiving inspections, skipping due diligence, offering above asking price just to get a foot in the door. The fear of missing out was so powerful that rational thinking left the room entirely. Everybody believed the music would never stop. But then the Reserve Bank did what central banks always eventually do. They raised rates. Not once, not twice. 13 consecutive rate hikes that shook the foundation of every household that had stretched itself too thin. The family that borrowed $600,000 and was comfortably paying $1,800 a month suddenly found themselves staring at a repayment of $3,200. More than half their monthly income gone before groceries, before school fees, before petrol, before the electricity bill that has also doubled. And right there, in that gap between what they earn and what they owe, the Melbourne housing crisis was born. Now let's talk about those 8,000 unsold apartments sitting empty across Melbourne right now. Developers poured hundreds of millions of dollars into these projects. Cranes filled the skyline. Construction crews worked through summers and winters. And then, silence. No buyers came. The lights in these buildings do not turn on at night. Security guards walk empty corridors. Developers open their financial statements and close them again because the numbers are too painful to look at. These are not just vacant buildings. They are monuments to a market that got completely ahead of itself. Why are they empty? Because the people who want to buy cannot get deposits together fast enough. The people who have deposits are being rejected by banks whose stress testing criteria have tightened dramatically. And the investors who used to snap up these apartments for rental income have quietly exited the market because the rental yield does not come close to covering the mortgage. So you have sellers desperate to sell, buyers desperate to buy, and a banking system standing between them saying, not good enough. The result is 8,000 empty apartments in a city where thousands of people cannot find affordable housing. That contradiction alone tells you everything that is broken about this market. But the deepest pain is not in the new apartments. It is in the suburban streets of Dandenong, Frankston, Werribee, and Melton. These are the working-class heartlands of Melbourne. Nurses, truck drivers, teachers, warehouse workers, people who did everything right. They saved for years. They got their deposit together. They bought their home in 2020 or 2021 when rates were low and the bank said yes. They signed a fixed-rate mortgage, comfortable in the knowledge that, at least for 2 or 3 years, their repayments would stay manageable. What they did not fully understand, what nobody sat them down and explained clearly enough, was what would happen when that fixed-rate period ended and the variable rate kicked in. That moment has a name in financial circles, the mortgage cliff. And in Melbourne right now, families are falling off that cliff every single week. ANZ, Commonwealth Bank, Westpac, All of the major banks have released data this year showing that mortgages more than 90 days overdue in Melbourne are at their highest level in 5 years. 90 days overdue means 3 months of missed payments. It means the letters have already been sent, the phone calls have already happened, and now the clock is ticking towards something nobody wants to say out loud. Forced sale. The bank does not care about the birthday parties in that backyard or the height markings on that kitchen door frame. The bank wants its money, and if you cannot pay, your home goes to auction. Melbourne distressed property sales in the first quarter of 2026 are up 34% compared to the same period last year. These are not voluntary sales. These are mortgagee sales, situations where the bank forces the property to market to recover what is owed. And in these sales, the outcome for the original owner is devastating. A family that bought at $700,000 had $580,000 remaining on their loan and watched the bank sell their home for $610,000, walked away with just $30,000. Years of repayments, years of sacrifice, an entire chapter of their lives reduced to $30,000 after costs. And that is if they were lucky enough to have any equity left at all. This is also why Melbourne is losing its people. Victoria's net interstate migration has turned negative. More people are leaving Melbourne than arriving, and the destination is overwhelmingly Queensland, Brisbane, the Gold Coast, the Sunshine Coast. Not because Queensland is perfect, but because life there still feels possible. Property prices are lower, rent is more manageable. A working family can still breathe. Think about what it takes for someone to pack up their life, pull their kids out of school, leave their friends and community behind, and start over in a new state. That is not a decision made lightly. That is a decision made when staying feels impossible. Picture a real family. Husband works in logistics, wife is a part-time nurse, 2 kids in primary school. They bought in Werribee in 2021. Their mortgage started at $2,400 a month, then it became $3,600, then $4,100. The wife took on extra night shifts. The husband started doing food delivery on weekends. They stopped eating out. They canceled the streaming services. They sold the second car. And still, every month, they were falling slightly further behind. Eventually, they made a decision that broke their hearts. Leave Melbourne, move to Brisbane, rent a house for $2,800 a month, find remote work, rebuild. They sold their Melbourne home at an $80,000 loss, years of savings gone. But at least they could breathe again. This story is playing out across Melbourne right now in hundreds of variations. And when families leave, they do not just take their furniture, they take their spending. Local cafes lose customers, schools lose students, shopping strips lose foot traffic. A slow economic hollowing out begins that takes years to reverse. Melbourne's backbone has always been its middle class, the ordinary working families who fill the suburbs, pay their taxes, support local business, and keep the city alive. And that backbone is under enormous strain right now. The construction sector tells its own painful story. The building boom that followed COVID has collapsed. New project approvals have fallen sharply. Cranes that once defined the Melbourne skyline stand idle in several suburbs. Tradies who had 6 months of work booked in advance in 2021 are now scrambling for contracts week to week. Subcontractors are not getting paid because developers are not getting paid. Insolvencies in the construction sector are running at record levels. An industry that employed hundreds of thousands of Victorians is quietly shrinking, and the flow-on effects touch every corner of the economy. Renters are not safe either. Landlords facing higher mortgage costs have passed those costs directly onto tenants. Average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in many Melbourne suburbs has climbed to $2,800 per month. A person earning $70,000 a year takes home roughly $4,500 a month after tax. If $2,800 goes to rent, they have $1,100 left for every other expense in one of the most expensive cities in Australia. Food, transport, utilities, clothing, healthcare, all from $1,700. It is not possible. And so people are doubling up, couch surfing, living in cars. The Melbourne City Mission and the Salvation Army have both confirmed that hidden homelessness, people not on official shelter lists but sleeping in cars or moving between floors, has increased dramatically from 2025 to 2026. The government has responded with shared equity schemes, first homebuyer grants, and stamp duty relief. These are well-intentioned policies, but they are band-aids on a broken bone. When the structural problem is this deep, when interest rates, construction costs, land supply, zoning laws, and wage growth are all pulling in the wrong direction simultaneously, a $10,000 grant does not change the equation for a family staring at a $4,000 monthly mortgage. So what should you do if you are one of the families in crisis right now? First, call your bank before they call you. Australian banks are legally required to offer hardship provisions. That means repayment pauses, interest-only periods, loan restructuring. These options exist, and banks would rather offer them than go through a costly forced sale. Second, call the National Debt Helpline on 1800-07007. It is free. It is confidential. Real financial counselors will sit with your numbers and help you find a path forward. Third, remove emotion from the equation. If holding your property is genuinely unsustainable, a strategic sale on your own terms will almost always leave you in a better position than waiting for the bank to force one. And if you are watching this as a potential buyer thinking the crash means opportunity, be careful. Distressed markets do offer value, but if rates remain elevated, if employment weakens further, if migration continues to fall, today's bargain can become tomorrow's burden. Always calculate with a buffer. Always check rental yields. Always plan for the scenario where things get worse before they get better. Melbourne has faced hard times before. The recession of the early 1990s, the global financial crisis. Each time the city bent and each time it found a way to stand back up. That resilience is real and it should not be dismissed. But resilience takes time. And for the thousands of families who right now are opening overdue notices, lying awake, doing the same calculation over and over, or packing boxes for Queensland with a heavy heart, time is the one thing they do not have enough of. The dream of owning a home in Melbourne was supposed to be the foundation of a secure life. For too many people in 2026, that foundation has cracked, and the city that promised so much is still working out how to make things right.